How is the psychological illusion model different from CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy? That's the topic for this video. This is Jürgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. So, by the way, I just published a video called CBT, a look at its strengths and weaknesses. So if you punch in provocative hypnosis and CBT, you'll find the video. So what's the difference between CBT and cognitive behavioral therapy? Here's the main difference. The main difference is that in CBT, there's a lot of emphasis on what people think. So you're essentially helping people to identify these thought distortions, to dispute them, and to challenge them, and to replace irrational beliefs with more realistic beliefs or thoughts. And CBT can be enormously useful. I actually practice a lot of CBT type techniques with some clients some of the time. In the psychological illusion model, we don't really concern ourselves with the content of what someone thinks. It's more about helping someone discover that they think to begin with, to help them discover the illusory nature of thought or thinking. So let me give you an example of this. I'll give you two, but let me give you an example of this. What is it that makes a nightmare scary? Let's say that someone has a dream where they are abducted by aliens and the aliens are doing all sorts of weird experiments on their body and they're terrified. Well, the whole dream is made of thought. The whole dream, the aliens are thought constructs. The character that seems to be you is a thought construct. The spaceship is a thought construct. The whole thing is made of thought. The only reason why it's scary is because at the point of thinking it, we don't realize that the whole thing is a thought. Therefore, it looks real. It looks like reality. It looks as if all of this centers around us, and it looks as if we are the character that all of this is happening to. Now, as the character, you could, of course, during the dream, try to alter your breathing or to challenge your thought distortions or to shift your focus, and that might be extremely useful. But what happens to the fear? The moment you wake up, open your eyes, look into the ceiling, and you realize that the whole thing was a dream. The fear vanishes instantly. There is a relief. And at the moment of realizing the fact that, oh shit, the whole thing was made of thinking, there is no inclination to run to the kitchen and grab a butcher knife, to defend against the aliens. There's no inclination to stand in front of the mirror and to do affirmations and to try to, change your states. There's no inclination that you need to close your eyes and go back to the leader of the aliens and negotiate a better dream. So the point being that when we think without knowing that we're thinking, thinking looks like reality, and it looks as if we are the subjects in a world of seemingly separate objects out there, and what we think seems so significant. But the moment where you wake up from the dream and you realize the fact that you were thinking, it's not that important whether your dream consisted of the Russians invading or being kidnapped by aliens or your child dying of cancer. It's not. The moment you realize that you're thinking, what you think looks less important. And to the extent that you don't realize that you think, the content of what you think looks supremely important. So it's all about helping someone through various thought experiments, hypnotic phenomena, meditations to see the illusory nature of thought in a way that's relevant to them in artistic ways, versus trying to so much work with the content of what people think. That's a big difference between the psychological illusion model and cognitive behavioral therapy. Of course, in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's also a lot of focus on behavior and trying to get people to behave differently. Another big difference is that, you know, the type of thinking that our suffering revolves around is self-referential thinking. You know, we say, I am depressed, and I am anxious, and I am jealous. In the psychological illusion model, we do our best to help people to discover the illusory thought generated nature of this I that the thoughts and feelings revolve around, and to see its illusory nature, so that people can have an embodied realization, a distinction between thinking and being. And this is also what Eckhart Tolle and Rupert Spira and Byron Katie and, you know, Ramana Maharshi and Maharaj, you know, that these sorts of characters or teachers tend to point towards. Now, here's the irony. So I just told you some of the differences between the psychological illusion model and cognitive behavior therapy. If you had asked me what's the difference between how you actually work and a CBT person, my answer would be not necessarily that much at all. You know, because I don't necessarily emphasize the psychological illusion model with all clients, because not all people are in a space where that's going to resonate. So CBT is an important part of my toolkit. So for some clients, some of the time, that's what I do. And ironically, on the very day that I'm making this video, I've seen two clients. One is an elderly man from the west coast of Norway who has had fear around heights, of course, fear around thinking, really. But a lot of what I have done with him has been to be a kind of guide in terms of helping him schedule systematic desensitization on trips. Now, I've done quite a bit of work to help him to see some of the illusory nature of his experience and to help him to increase his cognitive flexibility. But most of the work that he has done has revolved around doing trips in mountains, and I have kind of guided and helped them troubleshoot that. And in that respect, the way I work with them wouldn't necessarily be that different from someone who's CBT trained. And another client earlier today is another Norwegian guy who's had some anger issues in terms of his sons. And he's very intelligent, is an engineer, very analytical, has a tendency to quite philosophically inclined. And most of the work there has been a combination of CBT and RABT, you know, helping him to see his absolutistic demands and to spot emotional logic and overgeneralizations and black and white thinking and to dispute them and to change his philosophy around things. So, and that's been very useful as well. So for him, I think a more CBT type approach was more appropriate and more functional than a psychological illusion model approach. So if you ask me, how does your actual work differ from someone who's trained in CBT? Some of the time, not necessarily that different, even though I have more of a background in hypnosis and NLP and that sort of stuff, and that kind of alters how I do that type of work. But of course, at other times, most of the time, I more strongly emphasize the psychological illusion model. Anyways, if my thinking resonates with you and you would like to explore and see if you and I could be a good fit in terms of working together, I invite you to reach out for me to change work or mentoring at provocativehypnosis.com. As always, thanks for listening.